Hi, my name is Vasso Vassiliou, and this is Rethink, Reshape, Rediscover, a podcast about how we recreate our work to keep ourselves and our clients' brands relevant. This is our very first episode, and we're very lucky to have with us a truly special guest and a great thinker in the advertising world. His name is Mark Pollard. He is a strategist, a brand strategist. He is founder of Sweathead, a global education platform and community for strategy training and creative thinking. And he's also the author of Strategy is Your Words. Mark is originally from Australia, and he used to work for Leo Burnett, so we have a nice little connection there. He's currently touring Europe, giving workshops on strategy, and today he's in Cyprus to be with us on our podcast. So Mark, welcome to our very first podcast.
Yeah, pleasure. Love being here.
Yeah. So in this series, we aim to explore how we can reshape our work, how we think, how we create, how we brief, how we lead, in a world that, just keeps moving faster, especially in our industry where AI and automation accelerate everything. The tools that we use, the timings shrink, trends come and go. But call me romantic. I believe that the one thing that doesn't really change is the core of strategy. In its heart, isn't strategy still about understanding people and making them feel and turning data into wisdom and then wisdom into ideas and then ideas that will hopefully create emotions and ultimately lead to action? I mean, do you agree with this, or do you think that strategy itself needs to be reinvented in this world where we have new tools and new channels keep on coming up, media channels?
Yeah, two things. So the World Economic Forum published this jobs report, 2030, where they interviewed a lot of companies about the skills that would be needed in the next few years. And of the top 10 skills, 8 of them had something to do with critical thinking, reasoning, analytical skills, even leadership, which requires empathy and critical thinking. And that's obviously in this era of what on earth is happening with artificial intelligence and will it kill us by next year? We don't know. But a lot of the big thinkers are suggesting critical thinking is super important. Mm-hmm. When it comes to strategy, I'm a fundamentalist, but I'm not dogmatic. Okay. So I'm not like fundamentalist in a strict way, but I don't think it needs reinventing. I think it needs improving. Mm-hmm. But by saying that, it's not that strategy needs improving, it's that people who do it need to understand how to do it. And so I teach a lot and I talk a lot about words and defining the words we use in this industry. Mm-hmm. Most people can't define the words they use every day, and even probably they couldn't define the words that are in their own job title. So just going back to real basics mm-hmm. to help us work better together mm-hmm. and to hopefully have better work lives is where I focus my time. Okay.
So you mentioned the people who actually do the strategies. So let's zoom into that role. Like, what exactly is a strategist? And is the strategist the one defining a problem? Like, for example, a problem being, the obstacle that prevents someone from buying my brand, and then working around that problem.
Yeah.
And then where does the strategist work stop and then the creative person's start? Is there like a line or is it blur?
Yeah, for sure. So when I'm talking about strategy, I'm largely talking about strategy in advertising, mm-hmm. but then I would define advertising as communicating to sell. So mm-hmm. I have a broad definition there. And then when it comes to who does what, it depends. Because it's not necessarily about a strategist. It's about people thinking strategically. They don't have to have the title of strategist. Mm-hmm. And in each team, even in an ad agency, but also out of an advertising agency, everyone has different backgrounds, different focuses. So, for example, sometimes you could work with a creative team that is not idea literate, but you don't know until you start to work with them. I see that a lot in the States, especially in in-house teams, where maybe somebody started off as a designer in a startup. They've been there for 5 years, and all of a sudden they're creative director, but they're not conceptual.
Okay.
And then people come into the marketing team, they try to brief them, and they don't get what they're hoping to receive back. What I would say is that if there's a strategic lead, and that's not about job title, it could be an account manager, it could be a creative person, that they would own the leadership of the thinking. They don't have to do the thinking, but they get people together to do the thinking. And yes, they would focus on things like problems and insights. And then when it comes to the, what would we call it, like the transition integration from the strategy into the creative team, it depends. It depends on what people are good at. It depends on whether the creative team can receive strategy as well. Yes. A lot of creative teams aren't used to working with account planners or strategists. So I think what I usually say to strategists is they have to calibrate themselves to other people more than other people have to calibrate themselves to the strategist. So you have to work it out on every project.
Yeah. So why does strategy tend to be so messy? And, it gets overcomplicated. I mean, where do you think people get it wrong or get stuck? And is it psychological? Is it a lack of confidence or lack of knowledge or creativity? Is it something else?
There are so many reasons. I remember sitting down to write the title of this book, Strategy is Your Words, which is a strange title in English. It's probably not grammatically correct. But I remember sitting down and thinking, what am I going to call this thing? And I knew I had to use the word strategy. Back in the day, I was an account planner. Eventually, people started to call themselves strategists. We started to write about strategy. But then I thought, well, what's the other topic? And for years in the US, I had a lot of culture shock. I was in meetings at the top of Rockefeller Center with super powerful people. And I'm like, what on earth are people saying? I don't understand the words. And I thought I spoke English. And I thought they were speaking English. And then I would run workshops. I would see portfolios from aspiring strategists, kids coming out of college. I'm like, what words are you using? This is unintelligible. And so a lot of my focus has been about words. I think it's too simplistic to suggest that if we can tidy up our words, understand the words that we're using, like definitions for words like idea or insight, shared definition. I think it's too simplistic to suggest that that alone will help us not be stuck. But also, I do think that strategists who try to sound like strategists are the worst strategists to work with. There's something about signaling that you've done education, that you know big words, and you think that that makes you expensive and worth paying for. But for me, it's the sense, that stuff shows insecurity, right? And then a lot of businesses, because people don't study writing in business school, and they should. They don't study creativity in business school, and they should. But words can help us get through a lot of that.
And how do you think, one finds that a strategy really works? Like how do you know you got to a good strategy, that it's well explained, that it's an idea that will win and last? I think you mentioned in your book 3 things to look out for, which is mechanics, feelings, and reactions. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so again, when it comes to strategy in advertising, I'm looking for a sentence that brings 2 topics together. Those 2 topics coming together are an idea. That idea will look like it could solve the problem, right? So I'm trying to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, and then I want to land on a sentence that could give us a way out of that problem. So that's the mechanics of it. Like, is there an idea in the strategy? Okay. And so you know this, but if you've worked in the industry long enough, you sometimes say things like, what's the strategy? If you're starting out, you mean, what's the strategic plan? No, I mean, what's the idea in the strategy, right? So I start there. Then subjectively, as someone who's interviewed a lot of people and as a writer, I'm thinking, am I finding this interesting personally?
Yeah.
Right? And then there's, when I share it into the room, how do people react? And so even when it comes to things like insights, people will say things like, how do you know if you have an insight? And what I'll often say back is by the distance that people's snot travels when you say it into the room. So I want to know that there's a reaction. That's not to say that we don't need facts and evidence and numbers, but I'm trying to push people to sound a little bit more like stand-up comedians and people on TikTok, the people they already spend time with, because the people who get their attention and who get into their memories are very good at communicating.
Yeah.
So why don't we sound more like them than like an imagined strategist who has never done an MBA, but maybe could one day and has all these big words and is super academic, right? So, yeah.
Well, talking about insights then, you mentioned in the book, you described an insight as an unspoken human truth that sheds new light on a problem, and that an insight will make us recognize our lives. And I couldn't agree more with this. But the question is, how do we actually get to insights?
Yeah.
What if we don't have time? What if we don't have data or focus groups, in-depth interviews? And how do we know that we're dealing with an insight versus an assumption or a hunch?
Sure. So let's go back to the role of insights, like why do insights even matter? The point of an insight in communication is to trigger an emotional reaction. Insights are not the only tools that do this. Dramatic music can also do this. Jingles, mnemonic devices, etc. There are lots of little tools when it comes to storytelling that are probably not going to be in a creative brief that can trigger an emotional reaction. When it comes to finding them, we can talk to people, we can go to Reddit. There's so much data out there. And when I've worked with companies in a more consulting way, most of them say to me, we have so much data. We have 5 agencies. We have like 100 slides from each agency, and we still don't have a strategy on the page. And so I'll often come in and try to top up their research by mostly focusing on qualitative research, talking to people, going through comments and stuff. So we can always find insights. I think one of the questions that helps people understand this better, which I'm now going to give you, is, can you tell me something that you've learned about yourself in the past couple of years that's led to you changing how you behave, how you live?
Yeah, for sure. I've learned how I work better and how I create better. Space has a lot to do with that. So I change a little bit my habits to suit me better in that way. To be in touch with nature was something that my body felt that it needs lately. So I get to go to closer to nature almost every weekend, and there I can read and create and be and recharge my batteries. So that's a new thing.
Yeah, so on a subjective level, because insights can work on us subjectively, and then the question is, do they also work on other people? So if I summarize what you just discussed, your epiphany, we can use the word insight for you, is space in nature, is really important to you, right? That epiphany will lead to a change in behavior, which is what you described. So now you go more into nature, you've created more space around yourself, and that insight will break a pattern of behavior, which might have led to you feeling like you're in a funk, right? So there's sort of 4 bits to that. Situation, routine, there's a break, there's the epiphany, and then there's the change of behavior. So it's difficult when people say, I don't have time, because you can ask people questions like that. I asked a guy who runs an accounting company where they largely serve creatives, so stand-up comedians, art directors, etc. in New York. I said to him, what's something that makes you angry? It's a long sentence question. What's something that makes you angry that you wish your clients knew? And he said, my clients who are creatives don't understand this. If they don't take care of their taxes, topic A, talked about mechanics, topic A, if they don't take care of their taxes, it can cost them, topic B, their creative freedom. So we have taxes affecting creative freedom. So mechanically, we have an insight, and I'm like, whoa, I haven't heard that before. That's super interesting. And then I'm thinking, you could probably talk about that for 5 years. That could lead to a book. And so then I say, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, if the creatives don't take care of their taxes, they might have to take on a job they don't really want to do. 6 months go by, 12 months goes by, All of a sudden, they've not made their movie, they've not written their comedy set, they've not finished their book. But that's just from a very direct question. And so they're the sorts of sentence structures that I look for or listen for when I'm interviewing people, or if I had an hour on Reddit, I could try to find them.
So 2 questions about that then. Does it matter who you ask? And do you just, randomly pick a person or a friend or a colleague? Or do you need to choose a person that probably fits the profile of what you're looking for? And then the second is, I bet the question really matters as well. So you need to know what to ask, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of tricks with interviewing people. The trick is listening.
Yeah.
And not running away from the topic that you're talking about, as if you're filling in a form on behalf of someone. What's your favorite color? Where do you like to go out, right? That's how we start when we're doing interviews. Often it's just about a bit of silence. What do you mean by that? Tell me about a time when that happened to you. So yes, you need to talk to people who are in or connected to the topic that you're exploring. For example, if you're doing something around alcohol, you can talk to bartenders and try to understand the people who, how they see the people who come into the bar to order the drink. You can interview people who drink it as well. The more you do this and the more you talk to people, the more you observe, you can also use intuition. I think academics can be a little bit hard-edged about the role of this. If you use intuition, you just have to realize that you're not necessarily the audience. And your life experience could be helpful.
Funny you mentioned intuition, because I was going to ask you, does, how important it is in the strategy, and if someone that has intuition, does that make him a better strategist than someone that doesn't? And the same with empathy, probably?
I would think so, but also at the same time, I've seen tweets by people like Byron Sharp, who's one of the biggest contributors to the marketing sciences, where he said a few years ago that intuition is a medieval idea, right? So there are people out there who are much more hardened in their view of the world and how things should work and that it's science. But I feel that in my field, it's easier to know you have to use the science, but there is a little bit of creativity and coming up with things that haven't been done before as well, and that's what makes it fun. And because otherwise you're just repeating stuff that's already been done before, and then it is science, and therefore you're just probably going to be coming up with the same stuff as everybody.
Okay, let's get a little bit more practical.
Okay.
How do we stay sharp under pressure? I mean, are there practices or habits that help strategists keep their creative edge when we're constantly under time limitations and a lot of pressure? I mean, you talk in the book, you introduce different tools like dump a question or the 5 whys or the 4-point. So are these tools that, a strategist or a client tomorrow can pick up and be able to write better strategies?
Yeah.
Do you want to take us a little bit through these?
Yeah, look, it's like with anything that you do for the first time or when you're new to anything, like even like martial arts, right? So if you day one of martial arts, someone says throw a punch, what are you going to do? You're probably going to punch in a way that's really ugly and that could get you hit. But 3 to 5 years later, or maybe even less than that, 3 to 5 years later, you have some tools, you have some techniques, you've practiced the patterns, so it becomes less conscious.
Yeah.
So the more you do this work with certain tools that you can add to your arsenal, the less you think about it. That's one. 2 is having a way with words. If I was back in the agency world running an agency, I never say working in an agency, if I was back running an agency, I would have a very strong bias towards hiring strategists who could write.
Yeah.
I feel that really strongly now because I travel and I see so much work and so many presentations. I'm like, this is unintelligible. I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I have a very strong bias towards strategists who can write, even if they're more data oriented. And then practice over time. It's easier to work out what's good, what's not good on a subjective level. So you need your own taste. And I know taste is getting talked a lot about because of artificial intelligence. And then it depends also what you're ingesting. You know? And the final thing is trying to work out ways to build a work life or a life that fit how you think.
Yeah.
So I started my own business about 9 years ago, and I was doing more consulting in the first few days, or first couple of years. And I would do a lot of research. I might interview 10 to 20 people in a week. That's a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah.
And I type everything up. I don't even record it, but I type everything up. I'm weird. I need to feel words.
Yes.
And I'm listening to the voices. And because I've been on the internet for a long time, I go really quickly. And then what I would do is I'd go for a walk around Central Park. It's 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
To reflect.
Yeah, because I want to let my subconscious go.
Yeah.
And I know that through research, going for long walks triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. Anyway, I think it's triggers or whatever. It turns off the sort of executive functioning and allows the brain to connect dots in interesting ways. But because I'd been on timesheets for so long, I would feel guilty about going for a walk, and they were always my most productive, which is an American drug, my most productive hours. So there are little behaviors that I think can help people feel more connected, that can give them space, which is largely about understanding how their brains work.
Yeah, you're right on that, because many times when talking with some team members that may feel stressed or stuck, and I'll be like, well, go for a walk. Maybe that will help you figure it out. And the reaction is like, are you kidding me? There's no time to go for a walk.
Yeah.
Talking about that, I'm going to bring the conversation closer to home. Here are some challenges that we face as an advertising agency, and probably other advertising agencies in Cyprus too, I'm not sure. Things like time limitations, vague briefs, lack of data or research, absence of a dedicated strategy role, maybe ineffective brainstorming sessions, and sometimes the client-pleasing culture, clients not always being open to hear the raw truth, then agencies being careful not to upset the clients. So you've traveled and seen many agencies around the world. Listening to what I described, these challenges, and honestly now, tell me, is this a local problem, or do you see like a global, is there like a pattern around this, so it's irrespective of the agency size or the culture or the budget?
Yeah, I would say the past 10 years especially, there's been a trend towards doing the things that are easiest to measure, which usually results in us doing the easiest things. So in the digital world, there was this whole focus on last click attribution.
Okay.
Right? So like what did we do at the end that led to the sale? Let's pretend that brand doesn't exist, but like, oh, it was an email. An email by itself sold all these products, or a banner ad by itself sold all of these products. So let's just do emails and banner ads, right? And then there's research that shows if you just operate at that part, or in that part of your sort of arsenal, what happens to the brand? It tanks. So there's been a real focus on things that are easiest to measure. The numbers people, the data infatuated people have been winning. But in the past few years, even the social platforms have been changing the way they try to sell advertising by encouraging brands to focus a bit more on reach, not just on conversion. And there's research that I've seen from Grace Kite, who suggests that focusing on reach, even in programmatic advertising, can lead to better sales than focusing on conversion in programmatic advertising. So it's largely about the concrete minds winning, people being suspicious of brand, people being suspicious of thinking. And the US has a long history of anti-intellectualism and anti-thinking. So that's where we are, right? But the thing is, all that concrete stuff with artificial intelligence, I feel like that's going to be the stuff that gets automated the easiest. And then finally, I work with a lot of like large American corporates, and the story I've been hearing the past 3 years is we have gone through a lot of layoffs, a lot of reorgs, and now we have this team that's relatively young. They all think they should be CMO because they can use TikTok, but none of them are trained in this sort of thinking.
Yeah.
But they kept the more concrete thinkers. And so I'll go in and try to talk to them about more abstract thinking in a practical way. And it's interesting to see how they struggle because their brains aren't necessarily built for the more abstract stuff. And I don't mean abstract in a way that we're coming up with things that won't make sense in the real world, but I am talking about connecting dots in unusual ways to create new meaning. Yeah. So they're the trends that I see out there.
Okay.
And it's not just you. Everywhere I go, everyone's like, is it just us? I'm like, it's not just you.
Okay. All right. So that's a relief or not? I'm not sure. What's the...
Yeah. Well, but I think what you're talking about can happen on a company level and a CEO level, but also on an individual level. So one of the reasons that I talk a lot about the psychology of doing this work is because I know that it can feel lonely. Running a company can feel lonely. Being a strategist can feel lonely.
Yeah.
Is it just me?
Yeah.
Why doesn't the creative team like my creative briefs? Is it, do I suck?
Yeah.
And people can like hold on to that thought for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And so I try to be quite direct about bringing up what I'm seeing so that people realize it's not just them.
Yes.
And when it comes to, like, I used to work a little bit in healthcare advertising. I was always working on 20 brands in a year in Australia, which I think is good. But when you interview people about children who are sick or their own lives, the first thing that people want to know is that they're not unusual.
Yeah.
It's not really an insight. It's kind of a cliche.
Okay.
But when you apply it to our industry, it starts to have a different weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, since we talk about words a lot, I'm going to go back into the title of the book. Yes. So strategy is your words. You said it's probably not even correct English. I don't know. And because I've read the book, so I get why the title. But my question is, out of all the ingredients that go into a strong strategy, frameworks, insights, the idea, how did you come to the conclusion that everything is about words? Did you have like a specific experience that led to that? Or did you have moments where the choice of the right words or the wrong words made all the difference?
No, I think I spent 5 years in corporate America. So I've been in the USA. I'm from Sydney, but I've been in the USA for 14 years now. And I just struggled in meetings. I didn't understand what people were talking about. I play a different game now because I run my own thing. So I have a different energy in the US. The US likes entrepreneurs and independent people. When you're an employee there, even with a big title, you have to play this game where it's so robotic and most of the meetings don't make sense. And sometimes I experience that again. I might get sucked in as a consultant into those meetings. I'm like, guys.
Ineffective meetings is not just here, that's for sure, right?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a few meetings to pad your day so you don't have to work, you know? But the word focus came from me sitting down. I remember I'd been in Dublin, Ireland. I did go to the Writers' Museum.
Okay.
And I'd sort of read, W.B. Yeats was sort of important to me when I was 16 or 17 years old. I read a lot of his poetry. And there were people like him from memory and James Joyce. You could see the letters they'd written to people in this museum, very humble museum. And I came back and a few days later I sat down and I knew what I wanted half the book to be about because it's essentially the stuff I train, but I'd never written my training. I had practiced my training for years by that point, but I knew I wanted to write it properly. Okay. And then I thought, okay, I also, because I'm in public, I get a lot of questions. So venture capitalists get a lot of deal flow. If you're good, you get a lot of deals coming to you. Because I'm in public talking about this, I get a lot of question flow.
Okay.
And each question allows you to sort of expand this universe of things that you're thinking about. And I sat there, piece of paper, and I wrote the title, Strategy, topic A, and I knew I wanted topic B. I'm like, man, am I writing about words? Because that seems way too obvious.
Yeah.
And then I had an argument with myself, which is, well, if it's so obvious, why do you keep talking about it? But I might not have landed here without having moved to the USA. I just found the language really, really difficult. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah, so there was an experience there.
Yeah, it was 5 years of corporate America and not enjoying it very much at all. Appreciating the opportunity, but not enjoying it intellectually.
Do you write a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, not like type. Do you actually write or do journaling?
I used to write a lot of
Okay.
poetry
Okay.
and rap music. I got
Okay.
books of rap music and sad poetry. It's my
Okay.
specialization from when I was 12 or 13. And then I've done some journaling over the years. I sort of would experiment with phases of journaling and meditation and then not. But I think before I wrote this, I read two books that were quite useful to me, and they're books that a lot of people know. One was called Man's Search for Meaning
Yes.
by Viktor Frankl, which is, I think everybody
Amazing
would
book.
benefit from
Yeah,
reading.
for sure.
Because essentially you realize, based on his point of view, and he was a psychologist who was in concentration camps during World War II, the way that what I took out of that is meaning is really important. And in the research into pedagogy or education, personal significance and meaning, you need them for motivation, right? So I think it's really important if you want to learn, let alone if you want to do something important. But essentially, meaning helps you go from day to day, and you're going to make it up. So for some people in the concentration camp, going home and sitting under the tree they loved was enough meaning.
Yeah.
For others, they wanted to find a loved one they'd lost. Someone might have wanted to start a business. It's subjective. You have to make it up and tell yourself that story.
Yeah.
And then the second one was The Artist's Way.
Okay.
By Julia Cameron. And she encourages people to get pieces of paper out and write. And so I did that for a few months, not every day. Because the challenge when you're trying to shift is you think, oh my God, I have to do these, I have to meditate, I have to do yoga,
Exactly.
oh my God, it's so
You don't want it
stressful.
to become a task because then it loses its magic, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But I started to just write random stuff. So I would look at things around me. I'm like, I'm going to write some random stuff. And eventually I might find a story from when I was younger that was painful, but then funny. And that warmed me up to finally write this book, which the first half is about the words strategists use to me.
Okay.
So that's like that question flow.
Yeah.
So I feel like an imposter. I don't have high confidence. I'm always lost and confused. Clarity I struggle with.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write those words down, and then I turn them into mini chapters. And the first half is quite absurdist. Like I wanted it to feel crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people struggle with that.
Yeah.
And some people will say, I've never seen myself in a book before.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful.
Yeah. I can relate to that, yes, reading through the book. So, Mark, as we wrap up, any final thoughts for all of us writing briefs, creating ideas, shaping strategies, to help us create more work that have the power to transform human behavior, like Leo Burnett used to say? Any final words for us?
Yeah, I think it's really important to have high and clear expectations.
Okay.
So that's where it starts. I did work at Leo Burnett in Sydney. After I left, I'd heard that the relatively young creative bosses, maybe they were called chief creative officers back then. We didn't have that title in Australia.
Okay.
But I
Lots of
heard
titles.
that one of them spray painted on the walls, "Bring me my effing Can awards." A lot of people hate awards. And a lot of people do get frustrated with Can. I love the people at Can and Walk.
Yes.
Bring me my effing Can awards. What does that tell people?
Oh my God.
High and clear expectations.
Yes.
Okay, and you can hate awards all you want, but that is a signal, which could lead to a lot of toxic behavior. But that as a signal tells people to have high standards. The second thing I think is just slow down and stop trying to sound like a strategist.
Okay.
You know, I think try to sound more and more like the people who get your attention, the people you spend time with. Think through lines you've read in books, lines you've heard in stand-up comedy, lines you've heard on TikTok that are in your head.
Yeah.
Advertising is about getting into people's heads. And try to write and sound more like them. They're probably the two things that I would focus people on. The final thing is most advertising gets ignored.
Okay.
So you have to ask yourself, do I want to work really long hours, chasing pictures, trying to do this work? And am I happy with a life when no one sees the output of what I do? Because most people don't consciously see the output of what you do.
So to sum up, strategy is words, and words act louder than action. So let's try and remember that and rethink, reshape and rewrite the words that we use to help a brand or a person get us to where we have to be. Mark, thank you for being with us, and thank you all for listening.